My name is Emma. I am 29 years old. I live in a small town in Massachusetts. I work as a school janitor. Every day I wake up before sunrise, put on my work boots, and walk to the school with a thermos of tea in my hand. I clean the classrooms before the children arrive. I mop the floors, empty the trash, and wipe the windows. I do my job quietly. The teachers smile and say, "Thank you," but no one talks much. That's okay. I'm used to silence. I met Daniel 3 years ago at a small grocery store. I was buying a few things after work. My face was still red from cleaning chemicals, and my hands were dry. I dropped a box of cereal. Daniel picked it up for me. He smiled and said, "Rough day?" I laughed a little and said, "Always." After that, I saw him a few more times, sometimes at the store, sometimes near the bus stop. One day he asked, "Do you want to grab coffee?" I said yes. It felt simple and easy. Daniel worked at a hardware store. He was quiet, like me. He didn't talk much, but when he did, he was kind. He asked short questions. He looked people in the eye. I liked that about him. On our third coffee, he told me, "I like being around you. You don't make too much noise." It sounded funny, but I understood what he meant. After 6 months, we started seeing each other more often. He came over for dinner. I went to his place on weekends. One day, he gave me a copy of his key. I moved in the next month. It was a small apartment above a barber shop. 2 rooms, old kitchen, 1 window that didn't open right. But I didn't care. I was happy to be with him. The first few months were calm. We cooked simple dinners. We watched TV together. Sometimes we went for walks near the river. Daniel liked fishing, even if he never caught much. I watched him from the shore while drinking tea. I thought, this is nice. Maybe this is love. But little things started to change. He stopped asking how my day was. He came home, said hi, and sat on the couch. He watched TV until bedtime. I cooked alone. I cleaned alone. I went to bed before him most nights. He didn't say much. He didn't ask much. At first, I thought it was normal. People get comfortable. People get quiet. But after some time, it started to feel like I wasn't even there. Like I was just a part of the house. Not a person. Just something in the background. One night I cooked his favorite meal, baked chicken and corn. I wore a nice dress and lit candles. I waited for him to come home. When he walked in, he looked at the table and said, "Smells good." Then he turned on the TV. He didn't say I looked nice. He didn't hug me. He didn't even smile. We ate dinner in silence. I looked at him across the table and thought, does he even see me? After dinner, I tried to talk. I said, "Do you still love me, Daniel?" He looked at me and said, "Why would you ask that?" I said, "Because you don't show it." He looked away and said, "I come home every day. I pay the rent. Isn't that love?" I didn't answer. I stood up and washed the dishes. He sat on the couch and picked up the remote. Later that night, I sat on the edge of the bed. He was still in the living room. I looked around the bedroom. My clothes were in the closet. My toothbrush was in the bathroom. My jacket hung near the door. I lived there, but I didn't feel at home. The next day at work, I moved slowly. My arms felt heavy. A teacher named Mrs. Nolan saw me and said, "Rough morning?" I gave a small smile and nodded. I didn't want to talk. I just wanted to finish my job and go home. That weekend, Daniel went out with his friends. He didn't tell me until the last minute. He said, "I'm going to grab drinks with the guys." I said, "You didn't tell me." He said, "Do I need to ask for permission?" I said, "No, but it's nice to feel considered." He looked at me and said, "You always need something." I didn't reply. He left, and I stayed home alone. I cooked rice and vegetables. I cleaned the fridge. I sat on the couch and stared at the wall. The next few days were the same. Cold words. Quiet dinners. I tried to talk, but he always said the same thing. "I'm tired," or "Can we not do this right now?" Then one night, I made a simple cake. Just a small one. I used cocoa and sugar. I put 2 candles on the table again. When he came home, I said, "I made this for us." He looked at it and said, "I don't like sweet stuff. You know that." I said, "You used to eat it." He said, "Not anymore." I put the cake in the fridge. I went to the bathroom and closed the door. I sat on the floor. I didn't cry. I just sat there, quiet and still. I didn't feel angry. I felt tired. Tired of trying. Tired of waiting. Tired of feeling like I didn't matter. The next morning, I got up early. I made tea and looked at the window. Outside, the road was wet. The sky was gray. I thought, if I leave, will he even care? That evening, I packed a small bag. Just clothes for a few days. I didn't take much. When Daniel came home, I stood near the door. He looked at me and said, "What's going on?" I said, "I'm going to stay with a friend." He said, "Why?" I said, "Because I feel alone here." He laughed a little. "That's silly. We're fine." I looked at him and said, "No, Daniel, I'm not fine." He said, "I haven't done anything wrong." I said, "That's the problem." Then I walked out. My friend Laura opened the door for me and gave me a blanket. She said, "You can stay here as long as you need." I sat on her couch and drank warm tea. That night, for the first time in a long time, I slept well. Laura lived in a small apartment near the school where I worked. Her place had only 2 rooms, but it was warm and quiet. I stayed in her guest room. There was a single bed, a chair, and a soft green blanket. I didn't bring much with me, just a few clothes, my phone, and my coat. I left everything else at Daniel's place. In the morning, I went to work like always. I cleaned the classrooms, picked up the trash, and wiped the windows. But inside, I felt strange. I was not in my home anymore. I was not in his home either. I didn't know where I really belonged. Still, I felt lighter. There was no TV noise, no cold dinner, no silence between us. I missed Daniel, but I didn't miss the feeling of being invisible. After work, I walked back to Laura's place. She made tea and toast. We sat together and talked about normal things: weather, work, shoes. She didn't ask many questions. That made it easier. She gave me space. She let me feel my sadness without making me explain it. Daniel didn't call the first day, or the second. On the third day, he sent a short message. "Are you okay?" I saw the message but didn't answer. A few days later, he wrote again. "I miss you." Still, I said nothing. I didn't know what to say. I was not ready to hear his voice. Not yet. I started taking long walks in the evening. After dinner, I would put on my coat and walk through the quiet streets. I passed houses with lights in the windows, families eating dinner, children laughing, people talking. It made me feel both warm and sad. I wanted that feeling too, someone who wanted to talk to me at the end of the day. Not just someone who sat beside me and said nothing. At work, I moved slowly but carefully. The school felt like a safe place. The students never noticed me, but that was okay. One teacher, Mrs. Nolan, always said, "Thank you, Emma. The room looks lovely." I smiled at her every time. She didn't know it, but her kind words helped me get through the week. One afternoon, I walked out of the school and saw Daniel. He was standing by a tree near the parking lot. His hands were in his jacket pockets. His eyes looked tired. My heart started to beat faster. He stepped forward and said, "Hi." I said, "Hi." "Can we talk?" he asked. I looked around. There were students walking by. A teacher was locking her car. I said, "Not here." "Tomorrow?" he asked. I nodded slowly. "Okay, tomorrow after work. At the park." The next day, I went to the small park near the school. The trees had no leaves. The wind was cold. I sat on a wooden bench and waited. A few minutes later, Daniel arrived. He sat beside me, but not too close. He looked at his hands and said, "I didn't know things were so bad." I didn't say anything. He looked at me and said, "You never said you were this unhappy." I turned to him. "I tried." "You didn't listen." He lowered his head. "You're right." We sat in silence for a moment. The sky was getting dark. "I thought I was doing okay," he said. "I went to work, came home, paid bills. I didn't know that wasn't enough." I said, "That's not love. That's a roommate." He looked hurt, but he didn't argue. I don't want a roommate, I said. I want someone who talks to me, who looks at me, who knows when I'm not okay. I want someone who tries. I didn't know how, he said. Then you should have asked, I said. You never did. He was quiet for a long time. Then he said, I want to change. I looked at him. Why now? Because I miss you. And for the first time, I'm scared. I thought you'd come back in a day or two, but you didn't. And I realized I took everything for granted. I stood up. I don't know what will happen, Daniel. I still love you, but love is not enough. I need time. He nodded. I'll wait. That night, I went back to Laura's place. She was making soup. She looked at me and said, You saw him? I said, Yes. And he says he wants to change. Do you believe him? She asked. I thought for a moment. I think maybe, but I can't go back just because I miss him. I need to see the change, not just hear the words. She gave me a bowl of soup and said, Good. Weeks passed. Daniel didn't push. He didn't beg. He sent one message each week. Hope you're doing okay. Or, thinking of you. Sometimes he dropped off things at Laura's door. A scarf I forgot. A new sponge for my shoes. A small jar of peach jam, my favorite. One Friday afternoon, Laura said, You know your plant? The one you left? It's still alive. He waters it. I looked at her. Really? She nodded. He said it reminds him of you. That weekend, I went to the park again. Daniel was already there. He had a book in his hand. Hi, he said. I sat beside him. Hi. We didn't talk much, but we smiled. We shared the silence, and this time it didn't hurt. The next time we met, he brought a picnic. Just simple things. Sandwiches, water, and a small orange blanket. We sat on the grass and ate quietly. Then he said, I started seeing a counselor. I looked at him. Really? He nodded. Just once a week. To help me talk more. To understand what I feel. I was surprised, but in a good way. I don't want to lose you, Emma, he said. But even if I do, I want to become a better person. For you, and for myself. Tears filled my eyes. Not because I was sad, but because for the first time, he was trying. Not just talking, but doing. I didn't say yes to moving back in. Not yet. But I started to visit. We cooked together again. We watched shows. We walked to the river like we used to. But this time, he held my hand without me asking. One evening, I looked around the apartment. My jacket was still hanging by the door. My plant sat by the window, green and strong. Daniel brought me tea and said, You look peaceful. I said, I feel different now. He asked, "Better?" I nodded. Better. But something inside me still whispered, "Why now? Why did it take me leaving for him to see me?" I didn't have the answer. Maybe he didn't either. But I knew one thing. I would never forget what silence taught me. I spent 2 months at Laura's place. I worked, I cleaned, I took walks, and I sometimes met Daniel at the park. He never pushed me to come back. He didn't ask me to move in again. He just showed up, slowly, gently. One evening, he brought me soup when I was sick. Another time, he fixed a broken button on my coat. These small things touched me more than flowers or gifts. He was learning to care out loud. I could see it. He was not perfect, but he was different now. I also changed. I spoke more. I said what I needed. I said how I felt. I didn't stay quiet like before. And this time, Daniel listened. One weekend, he asked, "Do you want to come over for dinner?" No pressure. Just dinner. I said yes. The table had candles. Not because I asked. He just remembered I liked them. He made pasta. He burned it a little, but I didn't care. We sat and ate. He asked about my day. When I told a small story from school, he laughed. Not fake laughter, real, warm laughter. I stayed for 2 hours. Then I went back to Laura's. She said, "You look calm." I said, "I think I'm healing." Another week passed. Then another. I started leaving a few things at Daniel's again. My toothbrush, my book, a sweater. He never moved them. He left them where I put them. One Saturday, we went to the river again. We sat on the same bench we used to share. Daniel took something from his coat pocket. It was a small folded note. He gave it to me and said, "Can I read this to you?" I said, "Okay." He opened the paper. His hand shook a little. "I never learned how to say what I feel," he said, "but I want to try now. You gave me many chances, and I didn't take them until you left. That's when I saw everything. I saw your quiet tears. I saw your kindness. I saw how I made you feel small. I don't want to be that man again." He looked up at me. His voice was soft. "I don't know if we'll last, but I know this. I will always try now. I will never go back to silence. If you come back, I will hold your hand every day. If you don't, I will still be thankful you helped me grow." I didn't speak for a while. My eyes were wet. I had waited years to hear those words, but now I was not the same woman who begged for them. I was stronger. I was not empty anymore. I said, "Thank you, Daniel. That means a lot." He smiled and said, "I just wanted you to know." That night, I didn't sleep much. I lay on Laura's couch and stared at the ceiling. My mind was full. My heart was full too. I still loved him, but part of me was scared. What if he changed now but stopped later? What if this didn't last? The next day, I walked around town. I passed the bakery, the school, the small grocery store where we met. I stopped near a bench and sat down. The wind was cold, but the sun was warm on my face. I closed my eyes and asked myself, what do I want now? Not what I wanted before, not what I hoped for last year. What do I want today? The answer came slowly, but clearly. I want peace. I want to be seen. I want to be loved, not just lived with. I stood up and walked to Daniel's place. I didn't bring a bag. I didn't bring a suitcase. I just came to talk. He opened the door. His eyes were tired, but gentle. I said, "Can I come in?" He said, "Always." We sat on the couch. I looked at him and said, "I'm not coming back because I miss you. I'm coming back because I believe in who you're becoming." He nodded. "That's all I can ask for." I moved back the next day, slowly. I didn't unpack everything at once. I took my time. I still spent some weekends at Laura's just for space. Daniel never made me feel guilty for that. He always said, "Take what you need." And he kept changing. He still worked at the hardware store, but he smiled more. He talked more. Some days were hard. Some days he didn't know what to say. But he tried. He started saying things like, "I'm proud of you," or "Thank you for dinner," or "How are you feeling today?" I didn't expect him to become a different person overnight, but I could see the effort, and that mattered. A few months later, we visited my parents. Daniel had never joined me before. He brought my mom flowers. He helped my dad fix the back door. On the way home, he held my hand in the car and said, "You make me want to be better." I looked at him and smiled. I didn't reply. I didn't need to. That night, I took my green plant from the windowsill and watered it. The leaves were bright and full. I whispered, "You made it too."